Welcome to In Her Voice. My name is Kelly Covert, and I am passionate about helping women live authentically by listening to their inner voice. Get ready to be inspired by women of all walks of life that have set aside their should-bes and not good enoughs and are standing in their true voice, the voice of wisdom that each and every one of us has inside. Hello, everyone. This is Kelly, and you are listening to In Her Voice. I am so excited that you decided to press play today. And man, are you in for a treat, because I have Maria Wiklund on the show today. She is an artist, she is a business coach, and she is an amazing woman and personal friend of mine. And I was lucky enough to have her live in my studio, face-to-face conversation, which I don't get to do very often on the show. And it definitely gives it a different sort of energy. But Maria and I sat down to talk about what it's like to shift your career in the middle of your life or to change directions. And this came out of a direct request from Deborah, who is in the Worthy Collective. And she said to me she would love to hear from women who are empty nesters or starting over after a long career in another field. And I immediately thought of my friend Maria, because she had a very long career as a coach and a social worker. And then she completely turned her life upside down. And she's going to tell that story, so I'm not going to ruin it for you now. But it is such a wonderful story, and there's so much wisdom. And I really feel that you will learn from her and be able to take in this regardless of where you are in your life. This is not just an episode for women who are empty nesters. This is for all of us, because we all have these moments in our life where we can make a decision to change or to shift. And some of the things that we talked about that I was really, really into was this idea of using creativity as a practice. Creativity as a practice to connect more deeply with your inner voice. And oh my gosh, I'm so into that. We also talked about questioning our beliefs. We all have these beliefs that are deep inside of us. And if we don't spend time questioning them, sometimes we may be carrying around beliefs that aren't even ours. And we talked about that. And then we also talked about owning all of who you are, just really getting down to the true, authentic you and how to be that in each and every moment. So I really think that you're going to love, love, love this interview. Just for a little bit of background, I met Maria when I very, very first started to develop my business long time ago, several years ago. And she was my coach at the Wise Women's Business Center here in Syracuse, New York, which is a nonprofit that supports women in business. And since then, I've moved on from that coaching, but we became very, very good friends. And in addition to being a coach, Maria is a fiber artist. She's going to talk a lot about what that is and what that means and what it means to her to own the title of artist. So I really think that you guys are going to enjoy this. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this interview with Maria Wiklund. Maria, welcome to In Her Voice. I'm so excited to have you in person in my studio today.
I know. Thank you so much for having me, Kelly.
You're welcome. It is exciting. So I wanted to bring you here today, and you're my good friend, and you're a business coach here in Syracuse, and you're also an artist. And what I really wanted to talk about with you, and this was something that several people in the Worthy Collective asked me, can you please find someone who can talk about what it's like to shift careers or to do something new once your kids go off to school or when you have a big sort of life change later in life. And so I think of this as sort of your second life as an artist. So can you just give us a little background as to what you used to do and what you do now?
All right. So then we have to rewind, I guess first we can rewind back to 2009 because I moved to the U.S. In 2009 here to Syracuse, New York. And that was the big, like the big break for me to do something else. So I always been sort of standing on, two feet, as most people do. But when it comes to my interest and career, I've always been interested in social work and coaching people, counseling people. But I also had this sort of creative itch. But then, as in most families, and when you raise your kids, you kind of want life to be easy for them. So, and I guess that's what my parents did also. Say, well, get a real job first, and then you can always do whatever creative stuff you're doing on your, in your spare time. So that's what I did. So I worked in coaching and counseling and managing people and doing all kinds of things like that for most of my career before we moved here. And quite honestly, when I left Sweden, I was a bit burnt out doing that because as much as it's fun to work with people, it's also very, it wears you out. It drains you, actually, even though you get a lot, but you also give a lot. Mm-hmm. So moving here, I thought, well, now I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. And I had the opportunity to do something completely different. So that's when I started exploring this creative side, because I've always been a maker of things, whether it's been renovating furniture or making my clothes or doing whatever. So I came upon felting, which has been something that I've known about for a long time, but I never really thought about it as being anything that I wanted to do. So I took a weekend class at the Everson Museum here in Syracuse, and it was just amazing. I was completely in love with this medium. And long story short, that's what, made me switch my careers and feel that this is something that I want to do. And at the same time, when I was, exploring that, I got the opportunity to become a business counselor at Wise Women's Business Center, which was, after a couple of years not doing that kind of thing, it felt to be back, in my own backyard again, coaching people. And I really do like it, but I think this is perfect for me to be able to do it just a little bit, a couple of days a week, and then expand my own business on the other, whatever.
I love that.
hours.
So I have a couple of questions for you. How old were your kids in 2009 when you moved to the U.S.?
So they were both in college. My husband and I said we've kind of done things the other way around. Well, we kind of done things differently because their kids tend to leave home and the parents become empty nesters. But now we kind of moved away from our kids, and they decided to come with us, which was wonderful. So when we moved here, they went to college. So we did this big move. And we became empty nesters in a huge house.
Wow.
Which is where I have my studio now, by the way, also. So that's kind of neat.
So did you feel, because you said that you had what you called a real job. Your parents said, get a real job. And that you were doing that for your children, so your children could have a good life, so you can provide for them. So when they went to college, and I realize we're still very much taking care of our kids when they're in college, but when you became an empty nester, how did that shift your feeling and purpose of who you were?
That's a very good question. I never actually thought about that. Because there were so many things happening at the same time for me. But I do think that something that changed, and everything is kind of mixed together here. What I felt very strongly is that I kind of wanted to be some sort of role model for my kids to try to do something that I felt passionate about doing, and actually pursuing something that wasn't mainstream, maybe. So I think that was what made the biggest. That was probably the biggest change when they moved, or the what I thought about the most when it came to the kids moving here. But then there were so many other things going on with, moving to a new country and settling in and getting through all the red tape with visas and green cards and citizenships and all of that.
Right. Well, and I think that there's definitely, I think we can all relate to that feeling of there's so much going on in life that it's sometimes hard to get really clear and to find the time and the energy to tap into what you're passionate about.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to me, that's absolutely true. And I think that it was a clean break from our old life. I mean, we sold a house, we shipped everything here, and then it was easier for me to do something completely new, explore something new. I think if the kids had moved out when as kids do, I probably would have stayed with my job, and because it's easy, But now I actually had this opportunity to do something different. And I think I'm less grumpy now than if I had been in the same situation, because I think this actually has made me grow a lot as a person.
Interesting. So if you had to talk with someone, a woman who was not going to have that clean break, as you put it, like not selling everything and moving to a new country, what would your advice be to her to really get going on what it is that she wants to be doing, her second life?
I think if you feel like you want to try something new and you want to do something new, if you don't do that, I think there's a big risk that you end up being a grumpy old lady because you wanted to do something but you never pursued it. And I think I can see that a lot when I'm doing business counseling, because women come to us with their dreams, want to do something different, want to explore something new. And I think at least explore it, even though it might not be the right time, or you might not have the opportunity to take the leap. And, for me, becoming self-employed and having my own business, because that's not easy for everyone to do, but at least explore it to see, can I do it part-time? Can I do it on the side as explore it as a hobby to begin with? Because everyone doesn't have the opportunity that I had to do this. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to be aware of that it's not the same for everyone.
Yeah. And that we can't compare. We can't say, well, she did it this way, I have to do it that way. But I love this idea of what I hear you saying is you have to give yourself permission.
Yes.
To try it.
Yeah.
You give yourself permission to say, it's okay if you don't like it. Maybe you won't like it, and that's okay too. So it's this huge amount of grace kind of poured into that container of allowing.
Yeah, because it's also about being authentic to yourself and exploring something new and giving yourself permission to do that, and actually feel that this is who you are and this is what you want to do. And how should I put it? Just being, authentic to yourself. I think that is really important.
I love that word, authentic. It's something that I feel like a core value for me. Like I want to be sure that I'm being me. Yeah. That's really, really important.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious for you, when you went to that workshop, that weekend workshop, what did it feel like? Like, how did you know this was the thing?
I think it just I mean, I think it could have been other things too, but I think I was looking for something that was unique, and I was looking for something that was a learning experience for me. So this was a new medium for me. And I think that was, with everything else that was going on in my life with, being in a new country and all of that, I think exploring a new medium was just the right thing to do at that time, instead of going back to, sewing or whatever I'd been doing, painting or whatever I'd been doing before.
Mm-hmm. So have you always thought of yourself as an artist?
No.
Let's talk about that. That's what I want to talk about. Because I think
that's been a journey. That has definitely been a journey. And because I think the whole thing about saying that you're an artist is, it's because, who am I to say that I'm an artist, that I can make something beautiful? We have all these things, or at least, no, I should say that I have all these things in my sort of emotional backpack. I've been taught to, play it safe. Don't push yourself. You shouldn't think that you're better than anyone else, and all of those things. So it actually took a few years before I could actually say that I'm an artist, because I am an artist.
Oh, you are. I've seen your work. You're definitely an artist.
And so always, when you go to, when you meet new people and they ask you, so what do you do? What I always said first was that I'm a business counselor, because that's what sort of felt most natural for me to say, because that's what I've been saying for my whole life, and that's where I had all my experience and everything. Whereas saying that I'm an artist, that felt like, oh my goodness, I can't really say that I'm an artist, because am I really an artist? What if someone will say that I'm not an artist because I haven't got, the 4 years of college, of art school and all of that, because I'm self-taught. But if I don't acknowledge to myself that I'm an artist and this is what I do, how are other people going to be able to feel or know that I'm an artist if I don't think so myself?
Right. Okay, so I have a crazy question.
Yes.
Are you an artist because of what you do or because of who you are?
I think I'm an artist because of what I do, and that has made me the one I am.
Because I feel like you can't have one without the other. Like in my mind, an artist is something that someone is born to be. And there has to be the doing.
Yeah.
Like there has to be the doing to find that place. But then I think it's more of a becoming.
Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah. Because you can also be, I think we talked about this some other time. When I was working with unemployed young people in Sweden, we had this project for young unemployed men and women under the age of 25 who wanted to be musicians and artists and stuff like that. And if they so we had this metaphor saying that they were carrying around a guitar case. But did that make them a musician? Because maybe there wasn't a guitar in that guitar case. You bring on all these attributes that, because you make you look like an artist or a musician or whatever, but maybe you're not inside. So it's this whole thing about, who you are inside and what you look like on the outside. Because I think many of us really want to look like, we put on all these stuff that makes us, because we want to be something. We put on a gray suit because we want to be a business person, or we, put on black clothes and shave our heads because we want to be something, or because we want to fit in a group.
Yeah.
And I think that's as an artist, I think that comes from within. Because that's who are you genuinely deep inside? I think that's the most important thing, really. It's not about what you look like. Well,
and it's also this piece of like what I hear you saying is you are an artist, and then you have to have the action to go with that. And we talk a lot on the podcast about inspired action.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that this is it. So if you're in this place where you're considering trying something new, just thinking about it is a good start, but that's not going to get you to the next level. Like at some point, you have to put one foot in front of the other and actually do something. And it's not about doing for doing's sake.
Right.
It's action that's backing up what you're feeling on the inside. And I love that. And I love the metaphor too of like, you know, who are you? Are you dressing up as something that you're not? And I think that if you are doing that, you may not realize it, but you feel it deeply within you. Like you feel the struggle and the friction of not being aligned with who you are.
Yeah.
I know I felt that.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then I think in the end, you end up feeling like a fraud. I mean, if you try to be, so it's like, you know, wearing a pair of shoes that doesn't fit you. It's very uncomfortable, but you still wear them because it looks good.
Yeah. So what are some of your practices to really stay connected to your true, authentic self?
So I'm very much of a doer. So I really try to, you know, when it comes to my creativity, for instance, which I think is a big part of who I am and has always been, but it was kind of embedded in all these other things back in the day. I think just spending time in my studio and just, you know, be in there, even though I might not be inspired that day. Still hang out with my dog in my studio and let inspiration come. Because, I mean, for me, running this, I mean, it can't just be inspiration. It has to be hard work too, because otherwise, I mean, at the end of the day, I have to make some money off of what I'm doing, right?
Right, yeah.
So it's not about, because I think a lot of people have some kind of, you know, you think about an artist as someone who's, you know, it's purely inspiration. And when you feel inspired, you make things and, you know, you paint or you do whatever, or you compose. But it's also a lot of hard work. I mean, you have to be in there working away, even though you don't feel inspired that day.
Shall we even dare to call it a real job?
Yes. Yes.
Well, and that really resonates with me because I have said more times than I can count, oh, I've never really had a real job. Meaning I've never had a job where I go to the office 9 to 5, 5 days a week. I've been very fortunate to create a life where I'm doing things that I love. Everything that I do, I really, really love it. But it is still important for me to recognize that that is a real job.
Yeah.
Because I think that when we sort of invalidate what we're doing as not being real or not being worthy or not being good enough, then that's taking away from who we are.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited that you're calling it a real job. And just like an office job or a corporate job, you go every day, you do the work every day. It just happens to be work that you really enjoy.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, you can enjoy an office job too.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes.
And I think
that's good.
it's because I think everything has, but I think the whole point of this is that you actually have to, if you feel like I did, that you have an itch it's, for me, this was something that was on the back burner for 20 years maybe. And then when I had the opportunity to make something of it, I did. But even though I started doing it, it took a few years before I actually could acknowledge myself that this is my job. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I do on the side, that it's, I can hear myself being very dismissive to myself when I've been talking about this in the past.
Why do you think we do that?
I think for me, it was because I actually didn't really. Well, I mean, again, how were you brought up? What values? What set of values did you get from your family and your parents? And again, I think parents they really want the best for their kids.
Absolutely.
It's nothing about anything else, but wanting your kids to have the best. But I think this whole thing about get a real job first, and then the whole real job thing. I think that's a key. Those are key words for this. I mean, when we acknowledge that a real job can be many different things.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be being employed by someone. It doesn't have to be having this steady paycheck.
Yeah. Well, and what I hear you saying is it doesn't have to be what we believed it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really the key here, is that we have beliefs, some of them deep-seated, that come from not ourselves.
Yeah.
And we all have that. I mean, we all carry that. And I think that in order to be truly connected to our authentic self, to be able to listen to our inner voice, we have to question those beliefs.
Yeah.
We have to say, wait a minute, is this really what I believe? And we have to be okay with that. And that can be really scary, because what would people think? Or what would my mom think?
Yeah.
I think especially for women, that's a question that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, was that something that you did consciously? Like, do you think that you consciously questioned that belief, or was it over the course of time that you started to shift your viewpoint of what it meant to have a real job, or what it meant to be an artist, or any of those beliefs that you might have brought in?
So, I mean, if we hadn't made this big move, which I understand that, that's not a lot of people who do that, I probably wouldn't have pursued this until I was, officially retired, if ever. But then again, so my biggest role model and my biggest fan was my grandmother. And I actually have a photo of her in my studio. So I look at her every day. She passed away a couple of years ago. And she also had this itch, I think, but she never acknowledged it, because I think her generation, so she was born in the 1920s. It wasn't, living where she lived in the small rural community with my grandfather, who was a small business owner, she was forced to take care of the family and to take care of the whole, administrative part of the business. But she was really a true artist, but she never acknowledged that. And I think for me, seeing how she suffered in all kinds of different ways because she was suppressing this, that actually I thought a lot about that in my own journey. I don't think I answered your question, actually.
Well, no, I think that you did, because the question was, did you consciously question those beliefs that maybe you brought in? And I feel like you were able to look at her and say, does this have to be true for me too?
Yeah, because she never let herself use that creative. She would use it in baking, for instance. Making these fabulous cookies, because that was, sort of within, where she felt that it was okay.
Her realm.
Yeah.
Right.
So making, perfect little doilies or crochet doilies, stuff like that she would do, but she would never, expand her creativity to do something that was only for herself. It was always for someone else. And I think for me, being on this journey, I actually done it for myself. I mean, it's my creative expression and artistic expression that I'm exploring constantly, and then it's just wonderful that people like it and want to buy my stuff.
Yeah, like it's like a bonus, right?
Yeah.
Well, and so when you speak of creativity, so this podcast is In Her Voice, and it's about listening to your inner voice. How do you think that creativity and your inner voice work together?
I think they're, two sides of the same coin, or because I do think that, when I'm creating, I'm being my true self.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I've had a hard time working on, commissioned pieces, because then I'm trying to please someone else and I'm kind of limiting my own creativity because I know that, well, maybe that person doesn't like that green or that shape or that whatever. So that's been hard. And I think that's when I realized that, the two are very closely connected.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I feel like I can just picture you in your studio and that your practice of that daily connection with your inner voice is working your hands in your art. Like that's how you do it. And I think that it's important. The reason I really want to point that out is because we talk a lot on the podcast about meditation and journaling and getting still or yoga. But I just want to say there are so many ways to connect with your inner voice.
Yeah.
It could be through doodling or, painting or whatever. I mean, I just feel like the opportunities are endless and that we all should be constantly exploring new ways to get in touch with that place inside of us.
Yeah.
Because it's so important to the feeling, to wanting to be authentic, to wanting to be our true self, to know where that is inside of us.
Yeah. And I think the whole thing, I mean, you're so right when it comes to, meditating or even, when I'm in my studio and I have this sense of flow when everything is just, I can be in there for hours and it doesn't feel like, it feels like just a short amount of time, but I can spend a day in there, just when you get in that zone.
Yeah. I love that. I love that word flow. It's one of my favorite words.
And I think you can feel that with there's in so many different ways. Now I'm not a runner or, I'm not very sporty. But I can totally understand why people kind of get in that state when they're, running or just, doing something repetitive, swimming or whatever, or, playing an instrument, just when you get into, when you and whatever you're doing becomes one.
Yeah, it's that sense of timelessness
Yeah.
where you lose track. And I think that it's important to be aware that we're all capable of finding flow and think about what are the things that you do when you are in flow, because typically that's a gift. That's a gift for you. Like not everyone can get into flow while they're playing a flute or while they're running or while they're doing art. But whatever is the thing that you can find where you can get into that zone, into that space, that's important to take note of.
Yeah.
Because that's a gift.
Yeah. And I think I had maybe 5 years ago now, I was going through a difficult patch in my life, and I just kind of felt like I lost it. I didn't spend any time in my studio. There were other things taking up my time, and I really felt how I was missing that. But I came to a point when I just couldn't go up there because I wasn't inspired. And then I decided I have to force myself. So I say up to my studio. I had my studio in my attic. So I just went up there and just sat and just, looked in some books or, looked at my fabric, my wall, and I didn't really do anything, but I felt I had to just be in there and just feel the calmness because I was surrounded by things that I love, like, I'm a very tactile person, so I love to touch and feel stuff. And I think that was a way for me to get back into actually starting to create.
I love that.
And I know you talk a lot about journaling, and that you do that on a regular basis. And I think I can imagine that, it doesn't just come easy every day. I mean, you actually probably have to make an effort someday to sit down and put something on there. And then, to be able to get into that, if call it a routine or a flow or whatever. But sometimes we need to, actually stretch ourselves a little bit more to do these things that we know is good for us.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to stop here because it's just such a good practice and reminder that the things that we most need, I call them my non-negotiables. So for me, journaling, quiet time in the morning, I need that. I have to have it. I don't always want to do it. And there are some days that I don't. And you know what? I feel it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to note that the things that we need are not always the easy things. And that's okay. Like, it's okay. We need to exercise. It's not always easy to exercise. We don't always want to do it, but that's what our body needs. And so recognizing that and seeing the gift that you're going to get at the end of that and understanding the why is really important.
Yeah.
So Maria, why don't you share your website and all of those wonderful things so people who are listening can go look at your work and maybe buy something?
All right. So my website is Maria Wiklund, which is WIKLUND.com. I don't have a web shop on there yet. I need to, but it's slow. I'm moving this very slowly. If you're local here in upstate New York, I'm a member of Casanova Artisans out in Casanova. We're a co-op with 23 artists, and I have my stuff for sale there.
And if I know you have photos of your work on your website. So if someone from far away loved something, could they contact you?
Absolutely.
All right, great. And I've seen, and so when for those of you who don't know what felting is, Maria, my favorite things that Maria makes are these amazing silk scarves with these wool designs. It looks like watercolor to me, like watercolor in silk that then you wear around your neck or like over your shoulders. They're so stunning and so beautiful. So
thank you.
Definitely go take a look, even if only to get a sense of like how Maria's mind works. I think that that's a lovely
thanks,
idea.
Kelly. Thanks.
So I always ask one question to all of my guests, and that is, what is your inner voice in your life asking you or telling you right now?
Oh, it's a very practical inner voice today. So it tells me, Maria, you need to go back into your studio because holiday season is coming. And I'm really excited about that because it means that I actually get to, I have a goal with what I'm doing. And it's something that I love to do. So I think for everyone who is in this process of taking the next step and have a dream of doing something, think about how you can pursue it. Maybe it doesn't have to be so drastic as my step was to, step across the Atlantic. You don't need to do that. I think it can be smaller steps that can fulfill you also. And that, a journey begins with one step.
Totally. And I love this idea of you can use life changes or catalysts. So that's why New Year's is such a fantastic time, because it just feels new, or the beginning of a school year, or the beginning of a month, or a Monday.
Morning.
Right. Exactly. Like, I always love the idea of like, it's a new day. It's a new week. Monday's my favorite day of the week for that reason. So I think really, not waiting. And if you need that catalyst, find it in a small way, or obviously in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be small, and it can become something huge.
Like taking a class.
If you let it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Maria. It's been so wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And I just want to say one more thing. I just want to honor and acknowledge you, my friends, for stepping out of your comfort zone today and coming to my studio and sharing this story and having the courage to honor what is within you, because that is a true example for all of us. So thank you.
Thanks.
It is always so much fun for me to have people live in the studio. And I really hope you enjoyed that interview with Maria. I loved it. I love this idea of creativity as practice. Like, that's good stuff. Like, this, just such a good reminder that it doesn't have to look a certain way. The way we connect with our inner voice, the way we get really clear on our vision, the way we do amazing things like become an artist midlife, it doesn't have to look a certain way. And so sometimes that can be really overwhelming when you're looking at other people and you're like, but they did it this way. You know what? It doesn't have to look a certain way, because you are you, and it's going to be different for everyone. So I just really encourage you guys to embrace that, and to embrace this idea of just trying it. If you have a nudge to do something different, just try it. How amazing is that? Just to give yourself permission to try it on for a day or for a weekend or for a month or whatever. And if you don't like it, you can hang it up again. No worries. But I bet that if we all started doing that, we would be living more joyful, more creative, more fully embodied lives. And that's really what it's all about. That's what we want. So we mentioned during the interview about journaling. You guys know how much I love journaling, how much it has literally changed my life. And I feel that it's something that is such an easy place to start with. All you need is a pen and paper and the desire to connect with your inner voice and to really start to live out your vision as you see it. So to that end, I want to let you guys know that I am doing another round of my 5-day journaling program live. And that is going to be starting December 4th. So it's always available for you guys whenever you want to go do it, but it's super fun when we do it together. And I'm going to be doing some new prompts. So even if you've done it before, this one's going to be different. So I'm really going to focus this journaling challenge on connecting with your vision. So once we get into that place where we're listening to our inner voice, what is it saying about our life's true purpose? Let's figure that out. And maybe you know it already, and then let's get deeper into that. So this is a totally free program. I'll be doing live videos every single day in my Facebook group, and it's just super fun. And it's a great way to really hold yourself accountable if you've been wanting to rekindle your journaling practice or start a new journaling practice. And especially if you get overwhelmed with feelings of, oh, but I don't know how to do it, or I feel like I'm doing it wrong. This is such a wonderful space to really practice and to try different ways and to see what works for you. So if you want to be a part of my free 5-day journaling program live that starts December 4th, I want you to head on over to kellycovert.com/journal and sign up. All you need is your name and your email. And in most podcast apps that you're using, you can find the link right in the show description. So take a look at your podcast app on your phone right now. Click on over to kellycovert.com/journal and get signed up. And we will be starting on December 4th, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So as always, can I just remind you for a second of how freaking amazing you are? Like seriously, you have so much to offer that is just waiting to pour out of you. You are a world changer. Remember, when you change your world, you change the world. And I really believe that this is a place for you to come to that understanding that yes, you are worthy.